back to your time as an MP. You've served now for 8 years. Give us a sense of what it's like serving down there and what the sort of culture is of Westminster.
Yeah. Where do you start? Aye, where do you start? Exactly. I think the real issue is just with that culture, because it's very much for me, it's very much a public school kind of culture. It's very much the absolute opposite of how you would find the Nordic Council to operate. So if you're talking about cohesiveness and being confident about where you are and being able to work cooperatively, then that is, forget all that. How it is very much a in your face, we're better than you, we're not here to help you type attitude. And that's the way it comes across majority of the time. Now, on an individual basis, there'll be people on the other side of the fence in government or and other opposition parties that you get on great with, as individuals, and it's all, we're all human beings at the end of the day. But the culture it takes a long time to get used to it, and it just seems so. Again, looking at some of the Nordic examples, it just seems to be so. Not just last century, so the century before that. So, and you spend half your time working out why are they doing this? What's the benefit of working like this? So it would be something that you wouldn't see in a modern day company or the kind of work environment that people are trying to put in place.
New ideas, new thinking outside the box. They're still stuck in the dark ages.
Well, exactly, Aye. And I think that just that lack of flexibility in the way that they think about things is frustrating. So if there was probably one word that would sum up for me would be frustration, because you know that the country should be doing so much, and by that I mean Scotland, but you're working in a UK context, we could be doing so much, but there's so many barriers put into place because you don't fit in, or your face doesn't fit, or it's never been done that way. So you're up against all of that, and I think that from a Scottish Parliament point of view, I think there's a lot of lessons that we could learn from a more of a Nordic model rather than a UK model, and I'm sure there's ways of doing that over time, so we could actually make that adjustment. And especially as an independent country, I think there's we need to move on to that level where we can have a discussion with people who are not in our party, but are maybe part of the Parliament, and have that more positive relationship. So it isn't all like this all the time, and it's more how do we have that together, better discussion to take the country forward. And there'll be things you don't like in this, but but you get that, and you get you get A and you get B, and you can balance it out. And I think that's something in Scotland as well. Over recent years, I don't feel we've become terribly skilled at, and I think we need to go back to that. I think I've purposely kept away from gender recognition debate because I just find the whole thing so toxic. But the very fact we've allowed ourselves to get into that position where people are at opposite ends of the scale and there seems to be no ground in between, then that's actually a failure for us. So it's how do we actually create the circumstances where we can have these discussions, and they're not easy discussions to have, but how do we have these discussions in a much more constructive manner? And that was something I'd like to see, not just for Westminster, but to be honest, I'm not really bothered about Westminster, because it's time we moved on to something bigger and better anyway. But if we're setting up an independent Scotland, then how do we get to a stage where we can have these discussions? And one of the things I'm going to mention, just when I was thinking about that as well, is that when Winnie Ewing was in the European Parliament, these were the kind of things that she would come back with, to say, well, not everybody agrees, but they find a way of getting to sometimes it's got to be a compromise, but they find a way of getting a solution where everybody can walk away out the room with their heads held high. They've not given away huge amounts, but they've maybe gained something. So it's a way of a much more mature adult way of dealing with some of the core problems that we have in society or we have with the economy. How do we actually have that kind of discussion where we can move things on without knocking 10 bells out at each other across a chamber that was built in,
Do you feel like I was asked about Holyrood, the way that the Parliament's set up over there. I won't get too detailed on it, but they talk about like the list seats and the way that the elected representatives come in. And then I remember a more experienced person, a colleague, was telling me that although they gave us devolved powers, but the Parliament was set up in such a way that one party couldn't have the majority.
It was set up on the principle of like sort of cooperation, and that's you kind of sort of started a point that I wanted to get to, and that's that the Scottish Parliament was set up in that sort of idea, and by God, I love the Scottish Parliament, but we have to remember that our politics is sort of situated, and it carries a lot of the characteristics
that's what I was
from
say.
Westminster. It carries a few of them, even though it's set up, and in the face it looks like that. It's not truly a reflection of the cooperation that we fully believe in.
That was the question. You kind of worded it better than me. That was the question I was going to ask you. So if we became independent, would you like to see maybe not take it and rip it all up, but look at it and say we don't have to have those characteristics that are down in Westminster. Let's look at how we can shape our government and our governance for a new independent country. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think just the physicality of the Parliament and Westminster compared with Holyrood is quite different because the hemicycle type approach should and does, I believe, give you a bit more ability to not feel as if you're in direct opposition to somebody across the other side of the...
Not a sword's length away.
Then I've got my sword and it's slightly longer than yours, but never mind. Or vice versa. But yeah, it's a bit like that. And I think the other thing for me is, I think when we move on to independence, we really need to think about our Parliament as well and how it's structured. So the single chamber is probably not the ultimate goal. I think we should be looking at some sort of elected second chamber as well, and whether that people who are in the list or something like along those lines become second chamber members. Either that, or you try and strengthen the.
But they should be elected. You're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so,
either that, you try and strengthen the committee system. So it needs to be a lot less political party driven and a bit more driven by trying to get the best outcome and looking at the performance of the government in the best way. And maybe you need that sort of level of critical friend to allow you to actually make progress as a nation as well. Otherwise, you end up with a party that just feels that they can ride roughshod over everything. And we see a lot of that in Westminster. The Tories will come up with something, put it through as legislation, it'll go to the Lords, they'll send something back, maybe a couple of amendments, and then it'll go back to Commons.
But they knew it's going through all along.
And it takes a huge amount of time, but not only that. At the end of the day, Commons can just say, well, thanks, but no thanks, and we're going to move on anyway. So you're not always getting the best level of decision making, and that's what I think you're always trying to get to. How do you actually get a decision that is the right decision, but also respects the views of the majority of people in the country?
I was saying, you were asking Dougie about the traditions and stuff like that down there. Jacob Rees-Mogg stood in Leaving or something like that a wee while back.
I think that was the first time he ever stood.
He come up and I heard, I don't know if you remember this, but I heard that he had a nanny going round with him while he was going round. He had a nanny with him, and then Mary Black was up for one of our branch meetings quite recently. So I asked her, I said, I heard he's got a nanny. She goes, he's still got a nanny that goes round with him in Westminster as well. So some characters, out of touch.
Yeah, well, it's as you say, it's you just feel that when you look at the number of people, like number of millionaires who are on, not necessarily government, well, they're on the government benches, and totally unrepresentative of the public at large. You know, I forget what the numbers are, but it's like a tiny proportion of the nation are millionaires, but like something like 18% or something like, or maybe more than that, of Tory MPs are, you know, are millionaires. So, you know, totally unrepresentative of the public in general. But yeah, I think the question is, how do you actually get more and more people to put their name forward for Parliament in the first place?
Absolutely.
And it's not just about men and women, but, you know, other minority groups as well, and just try and get everybody a fair level of representation across the piece, which is not always as easy to do as it first seems, but it's not beyond the wit of man or woman to do that.
You've been an amazing guest, and I know I can speak for myself, Cammy, everybody in Dunfermline. Douglas, just thank you for your service. I've always found you to be approachable. You've always just treated us like your friends. Whenever we've needed something, or whenever you've come along to branch meetings, it's never ever been like, oh, that's the MP, and it's always been Dougie or Doug, or, you know, it's stuff like that. So thank you for being like that with us as well, and being a great example for all of us as well, for Dunfermline. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
So that concludes the first half of our first ever season. We hope you've enjoyed these episodes so far. I mean, it's not been plain sailing, has it, though, Naz?
No, we've had our ups and downs. Few technical issues you guys might have noticed. We had some sound issues and some editing issues, but we feel like we've worked all that out now with our new set that Cammy's put together as well.
We say as the sound's probably going to be terrible on this, but it's on a phone, so just bear with us. But yeah, it's been really, really fun so far, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to who we've got coming next.
Yep, we've got some great episodes coming up at the second part of the first season. So we're going to take a break for a few weeks, so bear with us. Plenty going on anyway, I think, locally in the movement. So yeah, we'll see you soon.
Cheers.